This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 11th of January 2021, and I am 2J.
I am 2M.
And I am GK. I want to wish you all a prosperous new year. In the headlines, in case you missed them, in the Daily Nation, after Uhuru. In the Standard, Uhuru DP clash. And in the Star, Ruto tells Uhuru to stop blackmail. So let us begin with the Daily Nation.
What did we miss?
What did we miss? Lots apparently. The succession race is shaping up. And here they say that it is centered on President Kenyatta's apparent political divorce from the Deputy President, William Ruto. And so the head of state was at Mudavadi's mum's funeral, may she rest in peace. Yeah. And he made a declaration that the presidency is not the preserve of two communities, the Kalenjin or the Kikuyu, and that he basically is opening it up to the other tribes. So the article goes on to tell us what those scenarios could be. We have a Musalia Mudavadi and a Mount Kenya running mate candidate. We have a Raila and a Mount Kenya candidate. We have common denominator there. But there's lots of scenarios that the Daily Nation sort of plays out. What is interesting is they point out, how do you counter anti-Raila sentiment in Mount Kenya? And they say, could a Mudavadi and Mount Kenya ticket trigger Raila to run on his own and abandon the handshake? So there's lots of scenarios, lots of interesting tidbits. But, there is this premium that is being placed on Uhuru Kenyatta and his hand in the succession. Now, a president always remains a prisoner of his partisan past. There in his company are those from his past and those in his present that he must reward.
Yes.
We can already see that there's been a departure from his past with the deputy president. And now we're trying to see what the future looks like. The only thing I take issue with this whole debate is this sort of affirmative action in politics. Because beyond 2032, if we are saying that this thing must rotate, the seat must rotate tribes, you could exclude a really good candidate, maybe not in this
just based on that argument.
Just based on tribe. And so I worry. I feel like this logic should not hold beyond a certain time. It's okay for now, but beyond a certain time, we must let go of it.
FGK, I completely disagree. I mean, great point, but I completely disagree.
In 2021, you added a new initial to my...
FGK.
That's fine.
Let me tell you why. Every single election in this country that's been contested, it's been contested largely because of tribes. Let's be honest, right? Now, you've had two communities leading this country for now 60 years. If William Ruto becomes president and he runs for 2 terms,
the next 10 years,
the next 10 years, 2 tribes will have led this country for 3/4 of a century. 2 tribes would have led this country for 3/4 of a century. Now, do we want to continue perpetuating this cycle, this rotation, musical chairs between 2 communities at the risk of having post-election violence? I think it is time we gave someone, and look, it is not just Kikuyus or Kalenjins that you can find good candidates. You can find one Somali who can lead this country. You can find a lawyer who can lead this country. But this conversation of having 2 communities at the hegemony of this country must, this story must stop forthwith.
Declaration from
2M.
All right.
So in the end, the Daily Nation ends with a quip about Uhuru Kenyatta sort of nodding where the first family is leaning towards, saying that they may have been endorsing the ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi, citing the 2 families' long history, but dependent on his ability to unite the Mulamba nation.
Absolutely.
So not a small feat there.
Yes.
Shall we move to the Standard? But before we get there, we have a 3-part criteria that I should remind you of. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I felt like topical, the Daily Nation was. However,
I'm surprised that 2M hasn't made a statement on the headline itself. 2M, what are your feelings?
Who told the nation?
Uhuru.
Who told the nation Uhuru is going?
That's exactly what I thought you would say. As much as the years change, many things stay the same.
So
all right, in the Standard, Uhuru DP clash. So basically the Standard is pretty much regurgitating what took place over the weekend with very little analysis compared to the Daily Nation. They talk about what the president said, saying that we need to stop this oscillation between two tribes.
Yes.
It goes on to say that David Morade echoed the same thing, saying the leadership of this country cannot be a ping-pong game between two communities. What will become of the others? But of course, this then was matched by what the deputy president said, talking about how he didn't choose Uhuru Kenyatta because of his tribe or because of who his father was. He chose him in spite of all those things, which I think is much a lie. I think 1 + 1. I mean, you need numbers, right? Like that's what politics is about.
Yes.
And I think that what GK was also getting at is this conversation we're beginning to enter into about tribalism and classism, because I think those are the two emerging conversations of the day. But I think if we look at it very simply, class involves power.
Yes.
And in Kenya, power is rooted in tribalism. So I think we can't put the cart before the horse, right?
Yeah.
I think what the president is inviting us to do is to deal with our issues of tribalism.
Yes.
And then thereafter, we can look at our issues of classism. I was reading something about ethics and theology, and it was talking about how the ruling class of any society or social group can be defined as the group that is capable of forcing an entire narrative.
Yeah.
And very quickly, we could say that the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins, for 3/4 of a, what did you say?
Of a century.
Have been the dominant narrative creators. So we're saying if we want to deal with what class really is, we first and foremost have to deal with what tribalism is in this country.
Yeah.
In Kenya, if you work hard enough, you can change your stature. We live in a meritocracy.
Yes.
You can move from being a hustler to being a dynasty, whatever it is you want, but you cannot change your ethnic makeup.
Yes.
And that's an unfortunate situation. We're saying 60 years after independence, we're still talking about, I'm this tribe, I'm that tribe. Let's deal with that first.
Yes.
Then we'll talk about class. So,
You know what, 2J? That headline in itself, Uhuru DP clash, should never happen. The deputy president, and I have no problem with him doing this hustler narrative of his. He can absolutely go ahead and do it. But look, it should not happen. He is the principal assistant to the president. This is gross insubordination. This man must resign, or he should be impeached. I mean, how do you answer back your boss?
I'm surprised you didn't say impeachment.
He should be impeached.
There it is.
Tuab, why don't you tell us about the star then?
He said, Ruto tells Uhuru to stop blackmail. And first and foremost, the reason why there was a fallout between the president and his deputy is because of his deputy trying to plague him. But I don't want to go there. Yesterday, William Ruto was angry. And the reason he was angry is because his scheme has been exposed and his underbelly has been exposed and his underbelly is weak. Now, I want to say this. Sanzu says that if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. Now, William Ruto was irritated yesterday. Now, what I will also say is this. William Ruto will not dictate to us whether we can speak or not speak about the tribal narrative.
Yeah.
All right? Now, I also want to say this, that he is probably a joyrider to Uhuru Kenyatta. And why do I say this? 2017, William Ruto brought 1.4 million Kalenjin votes to Uhuru Kenyatta's total vote of about 6 point something million votes. All right? Now, if Uhuru Kenyatta really wanted to win with a big margin, he would have gone to the lawyers who have a bigger voting a bigger voting bloc. Now, I think and Prof said it well, that William Ruto without Kikuyus is nothing. If you take Kikuyus away from him, he goes nowhere. And Kikuyus don't realize this, that they are the stepping stone to William Ruto's presidency, and that is why he's fighting for this hustler narrative like nothing else.
Yeah, and I think he shouldn't avoid the question of tribe because he's yet to unveil to us his winning coalition. Yeah. And if we're saying historically there is an ethnic arithmetic that he has to abide by, then he should pay attention to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. So who are we giving our winning headline?
I would want to toss the star because I don't think they sufficiently explain what this blackmail is.
I think so.
It's a speculative headline that's supposed to draw you in and then it tells you nothing.
No, they want to play the victim card. They want to say that William Ruto is a victim in this. Actually, he's
which
not.
Is a false narrative.
Yeah, he's not a victim. He's an inciter.
We'll toss that. So we're left between the Daily Nation and the Standard. I quite like After Uhuru. I think it is topical. I think it's sort of groundbreaking. And it's a little bit thoughtful. I don't think it's lazy.
And I think the headline, in itself, altogether, the picture that they chose, I think it looked quite, it was nice. It was a beautiful headline, even the way it looked.
Can we give it to the Daily Nation?
Reluctantly.
Doesn't agree.
There you have it. Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
You have Iga, and there you have a drawing of Treasury fitting into pants that are quite bigger than Treasury itself. And the caption there is, see, a bigger one will do. And he's facing the masses. What he's trying to tell us that that Treasury can barely do its functions because of the huge public debt.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I didn't see that either.
I thought they're making the case for extending, or
but there's more
pushing up
room.
the ceiling for more debt.
That the trousers of public debt, there's space. We're not overextending ourselves.
That's his body only fits on one part of the trouser.
So you're saying there's more space? Okay, let's just on account of this condition.
I think it's a rubbish cartoon.
Okay, us a favor.
Yes.
Okay,
Shall I toss it?
Yes.
Yeah, very well.
Gamzo, the Standard. You have a caricature of Kipchumba Murkomen, Margaret Wanjiru, and Johnston Muthama. Muthama is carrying a bag full of cash, I presume.
Or stones.
Or stones. And Margaret Wanjiru is sitting on a wheelbarrow. And Murkomen is there in the UDA party and Hustler Nation. And he's saying, we don't fear anybody, compare or Safi. Muthama says, money for campaigns is not a problem for us, the hustlers. And the arrow there is to City Hall. City Hall.
As we were trying to dissect this cartoon, I think we were all a little bit confused.
Yeah.
But I think something just dawned on me.
Yeah.
I think the whole narrative of the Hustler Nation is that they are poor and have been denied access to opportunities.
Yeah.
But if we look at who these people are, the faces of the Hustler Nation are not poor people who have been deprived of opportunity.
Yes.
But it is wealthy, elitist individuals who have more than enough money to their names. And I think that's what Gamzo
is trying to say.
Is Muthama, is he poor?
John?
Is he denied of anything?
I think his name
Does he have any grievances?
Jack Muthama.
Yeah, so I think...
Okay, in the Star.
I think it's a great cartoon.
Yes, they will pack it.
In the Star, there you have a caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta, piggybacked by Musalia Mudavadi, Raila Odinga, and Francis Atwoli, and one of William Ruto, and they are painting their own narratives, tribe narratives, hustler versus dynasty narratives. So all manner of narratives. But you know what? I welcome this. For a long time, everyone thought that the hustler narrative will carry the day. I have not seen such damage put on it like it was put on Uhuru Kenyatta on Saturday. And I think, sometimes I wonder, do you think William Ruto plays chess?
You think he plays checkers?
Checkers?
I think he plays draft.
Okay, so who do we give our winning cartoon?
I quite like the Standard cartoon.
I like the Standard as well.
There you have it. Standard gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought, but before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled We Need News Stories, Challenging the Toxic Myths Behind Our Age of Discontent by Nazreen Malik.
So the book actually starts with Nazreen giving a story about growing up in her native Sudan.
Yeah.
And her grandmother would tell her these stories about the house and the land that her grandfather once owned. An estate that was so vast that visitors had trouble navigating around it, that walking from one end of the house to the other with a hot drink would end up with a cold drink. But when Nazreen, as a teenager, finally visited this family home in northern Sudan, she found a property, and I quote, she said, was small, deserted, and crumbling.
Yeah.
So her grandmother's story had been a lie. It was a myth to support her against the difficult economic and social realities of being a widow with 5 children. So Malik takes this story as a lesson of the importance of dwelling in truth.
Nice.
It informs the central argument of her book, that we are currently living by a number of toxic myths that feed our fractured culture. And so each chapter of the book looks at a different myth. The myth of free speech, of the reliable narrator, of gender equality. But as we dissect the book this week, today we will start with the myth of political correctness. And so since the late 1980s, the term has been used to describe a preference for inclusive language and the avoidance of language or behavior that could be seen as excluding, marginalizing, or insulting another group. Yeah. So just 2 examples that I think can very quickly explain it. A lot of people have started to say happy holidays instead of saying Merry Christmas to avoid offending people who aren't Christians. I found an example of a UK job recruiter who sent out a job advert looking for people who were reliable and hardworking. The job advert was rejected because they said it would be offensive to people who are unreliable or lazy. So I think it kind of gives a spectrum of how extreme political correctness has become. But this concept has been weaponized to avoid giving space to those who have been traditionally excluded. So it's a term that we use to dismiss ideas that actually make us feel uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about your problems, so I'm just going to say it's politically correct. So by avoiding those tough conversations, we're actually pretending that things don't exist. So this myth of political correctness she talks about is an ideological tool that is rooted in the anxieties of the powerful. If a powerful person says we shall not talk about what the people at the bottom are feeling, it doesn't exist. And so she argues that we are sacrificing free thought for uniformity or being oversensitive about issues of gender, race, ethnicity, even class. So political correctness in Kenya would be to pretend that we are not an ethnic nation, even though we are. Being politically correct in Kenya is forcing a 2/3 gender rule because we can't accept the fact that we are patriarchal society. We don't appreciate the woman. We are very man-driven. So just a quote that the president said this weekend: "It is only 2 communities that have ruled the country, and it is therefore time for another community to lead." This would be considered to be not political correctness because we're not supposed to say those things, right? But the DP responded by saying, "Don't tell us about tribes. We want to have a conversation about every hustle." So the problem here is that there was a lack of communication, right? And a lack of basic respect. Because the DP isn't engaging in critics of our ethnic presidential structure, right? And why it doesn't work. And instead of offering his basic arguments for why he disagrees, he just dismisses the whole conversation and he says,
let's ignore
this tribal conversation, it's not important. Let's, sweep it under the rug. And so I'll just end with a quote from the book. She says that political correctness serves many purposes, but the most valuable is its moral shield. A get out of jail free card for those who hold intolerant views but do not wish to be held accountable for them. So this week I guess we'll get to dissect all of her different views about some of these toxic myths.
And just before you go to there's a thing I think that describes the DP and the president's back and forth this weekend. It's called frequency scrambling. And it's distorting the conversation and moving it away from what it is people are fundamentally disagreeing about. And so this technique of frequency scrambling achieves effectively, it's a diversion method away from a genuine grievance by raising a false one. So I guess the Kenyan public has to decide which one is real.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Or which one comes first.
Yes, absolutely. I love that argument. Now, I like the part on grievance creation, the Trump bump, as she says it. Now, she says that the role of political correctness as oppressor of thought and behavior was a pillar of Donald Trump's 2016 US election campaign. And it is true. Donald Trump said that which conservative white America had for a long time thought, but never had the courage to say. On gay marriage, for instance, this is what he said: "I hate it. I'm a traditionalist. I have so many fabulous friends who happen to be gay, but I'm a traditionalist." Now, he's on record saying, "I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I have been challenged by so many people. I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either." Quite liberating, right? Now, his core support loved his refreshing, unapologetic approach to politics. In fact, research published by the Journal of Social and Political Psychology in May 2017 found a strong correlation between a perception of politically correct language orthodoxy and support for Trump. What's my point here? William Ruto has told us that it is okay to have a conversation on class and not okay to have the one on tribe. He is trying to make tribe an uncomfortable conversation, a politically incorrect conversation to have. But in truth, Kenya is a collective of a nation of tribes. The Luya Nation, the Gema Nation, the Luo Nation, and 40 other nations. And if 2 tribes will have led Kenya for 70 years, which is 3/4 of a century, which we said earlier, why shouldn't we have a conversation of other tribes leading Kenya? William Ruto is not in a position to dictate the conversation we will have. We will not be cornered into a position. Like Trump, we will say the uncomfortable and free ourselves of the shackles of the class narrative. It is time we talked tribe.
I agree. Strong words there. I really liked this book, especially in the era of which we are embarking on as a nation. What I liked, and I'll borrow from you what she talks about Trump, is, he was a clear example of grievance creation and this diversionary tactic from actual issues that Americans were dealing with. Yeah. And much like the hustler and dynasty narrative, I think both have to employ anti-elite and anti-intellectual rhetoric. And when I say this, I mean because for you to counter the other, you have to offer, I think, a positive alternative. And I think the positive alternative is to deal with the issue of tribe, like you were saying to him. Yeah. So we agree on that.
Yes.
But what I really liked about the book as well is how this is a lucrative business. This idea of political correctness, this idea that it's people constantly trying to message you in various ways.
Yes.
So she gives the example of the Koch brothers. Yeah. Now they are billionaires and they're the second largest private company in the United States. Yeah. Now they funded multiple campaigns against the Obama administration, its policies, and they had this ideological network that was called the Coctopus. That's how wide and it spread its ideas. And they used this sort of fabrication arm of doing things so that they could do three things. One, they would brand minor updates into the language and public discourse of political correctness. Yeah. So the fact that you're being told don't talk about tribe, but now somebody's injecting and really telling you don't talk about it. Yeah. Taking true fragments of a story and spinning them into a larger fake one. And three, simply making stuff up. Yeah. Now the author tells us that this has become such a lucrative business. Now ask yourself, why is it that you gravitate towards the Fifth Estate, the Star, Radio Africa, or like all these different stations? Usually, and she says, it's because you tune in to have your worldview validated in the things that you're reading and watching. So those who watch Fox News, those who read the Daily Mail, those who read the Star, you're tuning in to sort of validate what you already know. So when a disruptor comes, you're usually quite shocked at what they're doing. And then this also got me thinking about Professor Mutahi's Tyranny of Numbers. At the time in 2013, it was completely shocking that he would discuss tribe. It was almost not kosher. Yes. But at that time, he was termed, politically incorrect for having to say the things that were an actual reality. So I'll end with this. In a society where everyone is too politically correct, people will be afraid to express their true feelings. Not only that, it means that nobody will be brave enough to point out a mistake because you're always being branded as politically incorrect or whatever it is. And too much political correctness means that you occupy too much time being politically correct rather than politically right. So standing for issues that matter. And then the original intent of political correctness may have been good, but I think the overall effect of political correctness has been to make everyone avoid these sensitive topics altogether. So as we go into this season of the long knives, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie told us that the truth has become an insult. But I think we should confront our own prejudices nonetheless. So even if it's uncomfortable, let's deal with it.
Talk about it,
on a day where we had winning headlines from the Daily Nation and a winning cartoon from the Standard. Have a lovely evening.